I will be talking about my case study student who I was assigned to in the beginning of the semester. My case study student is in the 2nd grade at the Roberts Academy. I am calling my case study student Matthew because I want to protect the identity of my case study student. About Matthew. Matthew is 7 years old. Matthew likes to play soccer but watches football with his dad because it is a way for them to get closer. 3 TV shows Matthew enjoys watching are Goosebumps, The Kid Next Door on Cartoon Network, and watching Fortnite on YouTube. My case study student is at a primer kindergarten to 1st grade reading level. So from the interest inventory, I asked my case study student Matthew about just to get to know him. Matthew loves Christian music because it is fun to sing in the car with his parents. His favorite animal is a tiger because he loves stripes and thinks they are cool. Tigers also remind him of his cat at home with the colors. Matthew's birthday was October 12th, and his favorite holiday is Christmas because he loves spending time with his family, and he has an elf in the family named Gubby, who wakes up in a different place in the house, and then when they say goodnight when it is dark outside. His favorite ice cream flavor is cookies and cream, and if he could travel anywhere in the world, he would travel to Hawaii because it has volcanoes, and volcanoes are cool. Or Europe because Matthew's mom likes to look at art, and Matthew likes to eat pasta. If Matthew wakes up with a superpower, then what would it be? Matthew would be reading minds because it would be cool to see what everyone's thinking, especially his teacher, my cooperating teacher. Next, I will be talking about a QRI. A QRI stands for a Qualitative Reading Inventory. This allows for the assessment of students' skills in reading ranging anywhere from elementary age to high school age. The test requires the students to partake in word identification, oral reading tests, presenting their thoughts on the passage, and along with answering questions related to the passages. The primer passage that I administered to Matthew was called The Fox and the Mouse. It was 4 pages long. The concept questions were basic. For example, do you know what gardening is? Define what gardening is for me. Matthew responded, farmers making crops and vegetables grow in soil with sunlight and water. The word crops is a higher level vocabulary word for 2nd grade. The results were broken down in 4 parts. Before reading, the concept questions were basic, but Matthew answered with higher level vocabulary. During reading, he used his pointer finger to help track when and where he reads. He missed 7 words that had similar beginning and ending sounds. For example, in the story it reads, they watched the scenes. And Matthew substituted the word worked instead of watched. Matthew read the short passage with 16 words correct per minute. Retelling. Matthew understood what the setting was, but did not understand the events in the correct sequence or order. And he understood the resolution, but without describing the key details of how to get there. Comprehension questions. My student understood the implicit questions, which are prone to be more difficult on the primer level, yet did not understand the explicit questions, or right there questions, and I had to reword my questions for him to understand what I was asking him to answer properly. How did this help me? Well, my case study student's expression during reading was amazing, and his prosody scale was a 4. Prosody means the patterns of rhythm and sound used in reading. It was a 4 because his rate was very well, but he was on the instructional level on the total accuracy and total accessibility scales. My case study student understands what the theme of a story is. I know that my case study student Matthew has issues identifying key details in the story, which means his issues are comprehension and more focused on sequencing. Primary Spelling Inventory, or PSI. I read my student the word without pronunciating the words, and then I read my student a sentence to go with the word, and then I repeated the word. For example, fan. The fan blew briskly as I tried to cool down after a hot day. Fan. And I read out 15 words, but I suggested we stopped at 10 because I noticed he was making mistakes on the spellings toward the end. But Matthew was persistent and wanted to finish the list I made for him. When I asked him to spell dream as D-R-E-A-M, Matthew spelled the word dream as J-R-E-M-E, which is interesting. Background. After evaluating the Primary Spelling Inventory feature guide, my case study student Matthew understands digraphs well, and when I said the word dream, he spelled it J-R-E-M-E. From this, I now know I need to explain the blend dr to my student, as well as vowel teams, for example, I-E, E-A, A-E, O-A, and I-G-H. These vowel teams are in the common long vowels and within word pattern stage. I want to start with the late letter name alphabetic stage, since my case study student is in the 2nd grade. After analyzing the feature guide, I realized that my 2nd grade case study student received 29 out of 56 feature points during reading. Some miscues were, as I have explained in an earlier slide, Matthew missed 7 words that had similar beginning and ending sounds. For example, in the story it reads, "They watched the seeds," and my case study student substituted the word "worked" instead of reading "watched." Retell. My case study student understood what the setting was, but did not understand the events in the correct sequence, and he understood the resolution, but without describing the key details of how to get there. Comprehension. My 2nd grade case study student understood the implicit questions, which are prone to be more difficult on the primer level, and yet my case study student did not understand the explicit questions, and I had to reword my questions for him to understand what I was asking him to answer properly. Overall, my case study student's expression during reading was amazing, and his prosody scale was a 4 because his rate was very well. He is on the instructional level on the total accuracy and total accessibility scales. My case study student understands what the theme of a story is. For my pilot intervention, I administered my first pilot intervention with Matthew to make sure that identifying key details in a story with sequencing was what I needed to help Matthew become a better reader. I bought the book Olaf and the Three Polar Bears from the book fair at Kathleen Elementary School when we were there learning about a topic for Dr. Powell's class. I recognized that during the interest inventory that he really likes Olaf and Frozen because him and his sister get along. I told Matthew that we were going to read the book together and I was going to ask him comprehension questions based on the sequences in the book to see if he understood the key details in the story. Out of the 5 questions based on key details in the book, he understood 2 out of the 5 events. So I know that this pilot intervention was on target with what I most need to help him. For my self-reflection, I know from working at a summer camp and being in more than a couple of classrooms that it is always a good idea to have the student or students you are working with get to ask questions about you, while still being appropriate, of course. so then he, she, or they can learn to trust you right in the beginning. You can learn a lot about your children this way. Now I know that I will be including in my reading assessment more of a friendly Disney approach with Olaf, the character from Frozen, as well as introducing a kid-friendly version of the chapter books Goosebumps. I'm excited to see how my instruction and reading interventions will help my case study student in the classroom as well as in the future. Thank you.